You ever feel drained after spending time with someone? Like the life is leaking out of you, slowly, quietly, but you can't explain why? Maybe it's the colleague who always smiles, but somehow you leave every conversation second-guessing yourself, or the lover who knows just what to say until one day you realize they never actually listen. This isn't paranoia. This is a warning sign. Carl Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But what about the ones who never even try? What if you could spot a psychopath, not in a year, not in a month, but in 30 seconds? In this video, we'll break down how to do just that, using the tools of psychoanalysis, Jungian psychology, and real-world emotional clues that most people ignore. You'll learn to see the subtle patterns of narcissistic abuse, decode toxic communication, and pierce the charm of those with antisocial and narcissistic personality disorders. This isn't about fear, it's about power, and it starts with awareness. Livia thought she'd found love. He was attentive, charming, mysteriously confident. Eric made her feel like the most important person in the world, until he didn't. It began with small comments. "You're too sensitive." Then came the silent treatments, the lies, the manipulation masked as concern. By the time she realized what was happening, her reflection in the mirror didn't look like her anymore. She had become a shadow, a version of herself sculpted by someone else's control. This is the insidious nature of narcissistic abuse. It doesn't scream, it whispers. And those whispers rewire your sense of reality. Carl Jung called this phenomenon psychic possession. The possession consists in this, that instead of man possessing a soul, the soul possesses him. In simple terms, the psychopath, often hiding behind a socially acceptable face, doesn't connect with others in a human way. They possess others emotionally, draining their energy to fill the void inside themselves. Psychopaths are not always criminals. They often wear suits, hold office, build relationships. But behind the charisma lies a core that lacks empathy, remorse, or authentic emotional depth. This is not just a personality disorder. It's a distortion of the soul. How can you spot it? Even in 30 seconds. Here are 3 tools drawn from Jungian psychology and trauma therapy to help. Watch the eyes, not the words. Psychopaths often mimic empathy, but their eyes remain empty, cold, calculating, disconnected. You'll feel it. It's like being watched by a predator dressed in silk. Listen for loops. Toxic individuals use circular logic. They'll deflect, deny, then gaslight, often in the same sentence. The goal is confusion. If you feel mentally foggy after a simple conversation, that's a red flag. Trust the nervous system. Your body is smarter than your logic. If your chest tightens, or you feel inexplicably anxious around someone, even if they seem nice, don't dismiss it. Jung believed the unconscious speaks through the body before the mind catches up. In the realm of mental health, we often focus on healing the self, and rightly so. But awareness must also extend outward. Not everyone who drains you is wounded. Some are wired to control. In a world that pushes us to be polite, empathetic, and forgiving, we must also learn to be vigilant. Because not all masks slip. And sometimes, the most dangerous psychopath in the room is the one who never raises their voice, only their influence. Eric always knew how to reflect what others wanted to see. With Livia, he was soft-spoken, curious, emotionally available. With his co-workers, sharp, efficient, magnetic. With strangers, irresistibly charming. But something didn't add up. No one ever saw him struggle. No vulnerability, no hesitation. Only a flawless mirror, reflecting yourself back at you. This is one of the most dangerous traits of a psychopath. They are emotional mimics, not emotional beings. In our search for love, connection, even friendship, we project what we hope to find. And psychopaths, especially those with narcissistic personality disorder, exploit this like artists. Carl Jung called this phenomenon the persona, the mask we wear to navigate the world. But he warned, the persona is only a mask of the collective psyche, a compromise between individual and society. For Jung, the persona was not the enemy until it was mistaken for the self. In psychopaths, the persona becomes the self, a hollow shell built from manipulation, not authenticity. The struggle here is not always obvious. People like Eric are often adored, even promoted. Our culture rewards image, not integrity. So how do we protect ourselves in a world of masks? Psychological tools to decode the false persona test for depth. Ask uncomfortable or intimate questions, not invasive, but real. People with healthy emotional lives may hesitate, reflect, or even become vulnerable. A psychopath will redirect, perform, or give a flawless but flat response. It's like asking a puppet how it feels. The strings will show. Look for pattern breaks. Pay attention to how they treat people they don't need. Waitstaff, janitors, strangers. The mask often drops when the stakes are low. Name the projection. When someone seems too perfect, ask yourself, what part of me do I see in them? Narcissism often thrives on our blind spots, our hopes and unmet needs. In the world of mental health awareness, we are finally learning to talk about boundaries, healing, and inner child work. But some predators weaponize this very language, co-opting therapy terms to justify abuse. The psychologist becomes their favorite costume. The healer becomes the hunter. So beware of those who echo your wounds without ever showing their own. As Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Livia once believed Eric was fate. Now she knows better. Because sometimes, what stares back at you isn't love. It's the reflection of your most fragile hope, held hostage by someone who never planned to give it back. If this message resonates with you, hit the subscribe button and join the channel. Thank you for being here. There were days Livia sat across from Eric in complete silence. Not the comfortable kind, the kind that gnawed at her. Cold, strategic, punishing. No arguments, no yelling, just stillness, like standing in the eye of a psychological hurricane. She'd ask, "Did I do something wrong?" He'd shrug, sip his coffee, say nothing. This is not conflict. This is toxic communication. Weaponized silence is a favorite tool of the psychopath, a tool not to resolve, but to dominate. By withholding connection, they condition you to perform for it. Carl Jung wrote, "Where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, their love is lacking." Psychopaths are not interested in love. They are obsessed with control, and silence is one of their sharpest blades. Jung believed in the balancing act of opposites, the inner tension between the light and the shadow. But in those with antisocial tendencies, the balance is shattered. Their shadow, the repressed, unconscious part of the psyche, is not hidden. It runs the show. These are the people who ghost without remorse, manipulate without guilt, and punish with eerie calm. Psychological tools for surviving manipulative silence. Reclaim the narrative. Instead of chasing answers from someone withholding them, ask yourself, what story am I writing in their silence? That story, the one that says you're not enough, is the real prison. Respond, don't react. Psychopaths thrive on emotional chaos. When you beg, cry, or rage, they win. Instead, pause. Name the manipulation quietly to yourself. Detachment is your shield. Speak to the absence, keep a journal. Track moments of emotional starvation. Patterns will emerge, and patterns are the blueprint of narcissistic abuse. Silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes, it's the loudest proof that something inside the relationship is broken, or worse, engineered to break you. As a psychologist, Jung saw the danger of disowned emotion. He believed that what we don't integrate, we project. And in the hands of the psychopath, this becomes psychological warfare. They don't raise their voice, they just stop speaking, until you become the one apologizing for your own confusion. Livia used to dread those silences. Now she sees them for what they are, not emptiness, but intent. In the realm of mental health, silence can be sacred, or it can be a cage. The trick is knowing which one you're standing in. Livia stood over the bathroom sink, staring at a message Eric had accidentally left open. It was another woman, another lie, another illusion shattered. When she confronted him, his reaction was cold, almost amused. No need to overreact. It's not what you think. No remorse, no ownership, just a masterclass in deflection. This is where the pain cuts deepest. Not just betrayal, but the utter lack of guilt. Many victims of narcissistic abuse describe this moment as the psychological point of no return. When they finally realize, this person isn't going to apologize. Carl Jung saw this in his patients too, people who could not face their own inner truths. He wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." But the psychopath doesn't just avoid their soul. They reject it. They outsource blame, shift accountability, and rewrite history, not out of confusion, but calculation. This isn't about making a mistake. It's about never admitting one. Those with narcissistic personality disorder often possess a fragile, inflated ego that cannot withstand the sting of responsibility. To admit fault would be to acknowledge imperfection, and imperfection threatens their false self-image. So instead, they project. You become crazy. You become too emotional. You become the villain in their personal mythology. Jung described this projection as a psychic reflex. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But with the narcissist, this understanding never arrives. Their ego is like a fortress built from glass, reflective, fragile, and entirely closed off. So, what are the psychological strategies to escape the blame loop? Refuse to internalize the rewrite. When someone constantly reframes every wrong as your fault, pause. Ask, whose story is this really? Truth doesn't change when it's inconvenient. Watch for the inverted apology. "I'm sorry you feel that way" is not an apology. It's a manipulation, a tool designed to invalidate your reality while appearing compassionate. Anchor in reality. Speak your truth aloud, to a therapist, a journal, or a friend. Truth is like oxygen. Without it, your mind suffocates under someone else's delusion. In the field of mental health, healing begins with validation. And validation is the antidote to toxic communication. You don't need their confession to find your closure. You don't need their remorse to reclaim your reality. As a psychologist, Jung believed that darkness unacknowledged becomes darkness projected. But you, the one who sees, who feels, who dares to confront, you hold the mirror they fear most. Eric never confessed, but Livia did something far more powerful. She stopped needing the apology and started believing herself. After the breakup, Livia still checked her phone, hoping Eric would reach out. Not to apologize, but to redeem himself. A part of her wanted to believe he could change, that the man who once held her face so tenderly could not be the same one who emotionally erased her. This is the final hook, the one that keeps so many trapped in the cycle of narcissistic abuse. Empathy. The very trait that makes you human becomes the blade they twist with precision. In Jungian psychology, this dynamic is not a coincidence. Carl Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The psychopath survives by staying in the dark, not confronting their inner void, not feeling remorse, and feeding on the light of others. People with deep empathy are often the most vulnerable. They project humanity where there is none. They fill in the missing soul of the psychopath with their own goodness. But empathy without discernment is not virtue. It is a blindfold. Jung believed that in order to become whole, we must encounter the shadow, our dark, unconscious counterpart, and learn from it. But the danger comes when we merge with someone else's shadow, confusing it for our own. Livia wasn't broken. She was reflecting someone else's disorder and blaming herself for it. This is the psychological fallout of toxic communication and narcissism. You begin to question your instincts, doubt your worth, and defend those who slowly dismantle your identity. What are the psychological strategies to escape the empathy trap? Create an empathy boundary. Ask yourself, is this compassion helping them or harming me? Empathy should never cost you your mental health. Separate hurt from harm. Many narcissists and psychopaths play the victim. They talk about their trauma, their pain, their wounds. But there's a difference between someone who is hurting and someone who is harming you while they hurt. Jung reminds us that the wounded healer must know his own limits. Use detachment as medicine. You don't need to become cold. You need to become clear. Detachment is not cruelty. It's clarity with compassion. In the field of psychoanalysis, empathy is sacred. But when used against you, it becomes a weapon, not of violence, but of confusion. The psychopath, the antisocial manipulator, does not want your help. They want your surrender. And as Jung said, he who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakes. Livia finally awoke. She stopped asking, "How could he?" and started asking, "Why did I let it continue?" That question didn't break her. It freed her. Months passed. Livia started therapy. She began rebuilding her sense of self, piece by piece. But something haunted her. Not Eric himself. The question, what kind of person does this and feels nothing? Her therapist used a term that chilled her. Psychological stunting. The idea that some people, especially those with antisocial or narcissistic personality disorders, simply stop evolving emotionally. They grow older, but not deeper. They learn to charm, manipulate, and mimic, but not to connect, reflect, or love. Carl Jung explored this in his theory of individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming a whole, integrated self. Individuation means becoming an individual, and insofar as individuality embraces our innermost, last, and incomparable uniqueness, it also implies becoming one's own self. But a psychopath never starts that journey. They remain fragmented, a mosaic of stolen traits, empty charisma, and manipulative tactics. This isn't just a mental condition, it's a spiritual arrest. They resist growth because growth would require them to feel shame, to confront their emptiness, to sacrifice power for connection. Instead, they feed on others to maintain the illusion of a self. What makes this more dangerous is that they often pass as high-functioning. They excel in society, sometimes even posing as mental health advocates, therapists, or partners in healing. But make no mistake, this is not healing. It is performance. Check for emotional age. Does the person throw tantrums when challenged, sulk when they don't get their way, or avoid responsibility like a child? This is a sign of stunted development. Jung believed maturity begins when we stop blaming our parents. Watch for role-playing narcissists and psychopaths often become what they think you want. Today, the sensitive poet. Tomorrow, the stoic protector. There is no core, just shifting masks. Ask, is there a self at all? People in a healthy process of psychoanalysis reveal themselves over time. Psychopaths reveal nothing. They keep you chasing depth that does not exist. In the language of psychologists, we might call this a developmental block. In the language of the soul, it is more brutal, a refusal to become human. Livia stopped trying to diagnose Eric. She realized that some personalities aren't wounded, they are designed to wound. She no longer needed to understand his story. She needed to write her own. Because in the end, not all people seek growth. Some seek only mirrors, people to reflect their illusion back to them. Carl Jung warned, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Livia claimed that privilege, and she did it by walking away from someone who never even started the journey. You can't always explain it, but sometimes you feel it in your gut, your skin, your bones. Something's off. Something's wrong. But you're told, don't be so sensitive. You're imagining things. They're just misunderstood. No, you are not imagining it. What you're sensing is the presence of someone who does not feel the way you do, who does not bond, who does not regret, who only mimics the motions of connection to get what they want. A psychopath isn't someone hiding in the shadows. They often stand in the spotlight, persuasive, magnetic, admired. But behind the mask, there is no self, only appetite. Carl Jung gave us the map to navigate these encounters. He taught us that the darkness we refuse to face will govern our lives from behind the curtain. He called us to see beyond appearances, into motive, into pattern, into the psyche. In a world flooded with noise, therapy buzzwords, performative empathy, toxic charm, it's easy to get lost. But here's your compass. If someone drains your energy, blurs your reality, and makes you question your sanity, they're not your healer. They're your warning. This is your call to mental health awareness, not just for others, but for yourself. To stop confusing manipulation with love, to stop mistaking the absence of violence for the presence of care, to trust your nervous system, to reclaim your story. You can spot a psychopath in 30 seconds if you're brave enough to look without denial. Because some people wear masks so well, the only way to see them clearly is to finally take yours off.